Max tells his therapist about his condition and how people die if they take even a glance at his face, but the therapist doesn't believe him and he convinces Max to show him his face and ends up dying of a heart attack. Then a flashback shows the day a baby is born at the hospital, normally like any other day, except the baby is different. When the doctors take their first look at him, they pass away from his beauty. But he has just started. Baby Max is the most handsome person alive. Just one look at his face can kill a person in response. His parents bandage his face every day and move to a small town where the chance of Max's good looks killing people is lower. Max now 16 and he is depressed, homeschooled and barely leaves the house. Back to the present and his therapist, the police show up and they question why Max is always at the scene of every random death in town. Max's family and his only friend Dan are concerned about Max, which he will never find a girlfriend. However, dating doesn't concern Max. Instead, he asks Dan to hit him in the face with a brick so that he can be less beautiful. But his body heals too fast, so the damage to his face doesn't last. At the doctor's office, Max's mom reads about foreign exchange students and tells Max to find a magazine, but the rack is empty. A girl named Alex has one on her lap that she isn't reading. Max attempts to have it, but she doesn't hand it at first, but when Max sits down, she hands over her magazine. Later, Dan tricks a girl into going on a date with Max. The date is going awkwardly, but as things begin to warm up, chaos ensues behind them. As a fight breaks out between a waitress and her ex, he throws things to the floor and goes to leave, but recognizes Max's date. He sits at their table and tries intimidating Max. When the waiter brings out their drinks, Max knocks them onto the table. Craig takes Max by the face and shoves it into the spill. Then Craig is forced to leave. The girl leaves too. Rejected Max stands on the edge of a bridge, contemplating suicide. Alex appears beside him and throws a bag of jelly beans into the water to show how far the jump is. Max says that when he was young he dreamed of sitting in a bathtub full of jelly beans. Alex convinces Max to come down by offering him to join her on the bus. The bus takes them to a retirement home. To Max's surprise, Alex is meeting a woman named Esther who is in the early stages of Alzheimer. Afterwards, Alex walks Max back home. Max asks if they may hang out again, but Alex rejects it for some reason which can't convince Max. For that, Max waits at the bus stop the next day, hoping that Alex will show up. When she arrives, Max convinces her to spend a few hours with him. Together they go to the town grocery store and stock up on jelly beans, sitting in a bathtub full of jelly beans like in Max's dream. Max admits the reason why his face is bandaged, afraid it might scare her off, but Alex already knows though, since Max is very popular at the hospital. Alex then reveals that she has a heart condition where excitement makes her heart grow larger. She wears protective gear on her chest to detect heart growth. That night they bring drinks to an old movie theater and play a drinking game until Max becomes drunk. Alex brings Max back home and takes care of him. His parents storm into the room with a Chinese foreign exchange student Yushin. They are extremely happy when they realize Max is hanging out with a girl. At the retirement home, Max and Alex play board games with Esther and her best friend Rosemary. It's Rosemary's birthday, which makes the old folks discuss what it's like to know their time is coming. Alex is clearly uncomfortable as she too can relate to the topic. The next day the teens go on a camping trip. Alex injures herself on a branch and begins to bleed, so Max rips off some of his bandages to wrap around her wound. Alex storms ahead of the group, realizing that her monitor is blinking red and her heart is slowly growing. At night, Dan and his date are rolling around in a sleeping bag while Max and Alex watch in horror. Max has gotten used to Dan's shenanigans because Dan can get girls and Max can't. Alex retorts that he has the bandages because he's too good looking and wishes she could see his face. Struck with an idea, Max throws a blanket on them and forces Alex to close her eyes. He removes his wrappings and puts them over her eyes so she can feel his face by touching. Alex asks if he's ever been kissed and Max talks about a time where he tried to kiss a girl in the first grade. He made her close her eyes, but she was young and kids don't listen. Alex says she won't make the same mistake and kisses Max. The next day, Max, Dan, and Yushin play video games where Yushin hits on Dan in Chinese while destroying him in the game. Max calls Alex to ask when she's coming, but she lies and says she must stay home. However, Alex is actually at the doctor's, who tell her mother that her heart is expanding. Max's mom makes him and Dan take their dead Christmas tree outside while Yushin is smoking cigarettes. She accidentally sets the tree on fire, but doesn't care and goes back inside. The boys try to snuff out the flames, injuring Dan in the process. They go to the hospital to treat Dan's wounds and notice Alex in the hallway with her mom. Alex is being dodgy and tries not to interact with them, but the boys introduce themselves. Alex lies to her mom and says that they work at the retirement home. Later Alex explains that her mom has anxiety about her having friends because she considers them to be a death sentence for her. A few days later Alex and Max return to the retirement home with birthday gifts for Rosemary. However, it turns out that Rosemary is in a shaky existence. They watch her laying down uncomfortably in the hospital's bed on death's doorstep. Overcome with emotion, Alex's heart begins to race and flees the hospital room. She's upset that Rosemary is barely holding on and clearly is trying to pass away peacefully, but the machines are keeping her alive just to keep her there. Alex pleads for Max to show Rosemary his face. Max hates the idea, but Alex tells him that his face isn't a curse to the people who know what dying slowly feels like. Alex leaves the retirement home, and after reconsideration Max returns to Rosemary's room. He asks if she wants to go to sleep, and she seems happy to. Max removes his bandages as Rosemary's eyes flutter open and her heart monitor flatlines. Now back at the diner, Dan tries to flirt with the waitress. He's going to invite her to the spring fling and asks Max to attend with Alex. Alex is no longer talking to him though, so Max shows up at her door later that day. When she answers, he notices that her heart monitor light is glowing red. Max discovers that her heart has been growing this whole time, and he is most likely the cause. Alex doesn't want this to prevent them from seeing each other. However, she accepts his offer to go to the spring fling. Before the dance, Max and Alex dress wildly in outfits from the local sex shop. Alex dresses as a French maid and Max dresses in a dog mask as a horn dog. While slow dancing, Alex feels her heart race and leaves for the bathroom. Max, Dan, and the waitress go to the hallway for snacks, but the waitress's ex, Craig, shows up. Greg remembers Max from the diner and knows about the tales of his face killing people. Craig grabs Max and points his face at the waitress. Slowly he removes the mask and she begins to smile. Her body drops to the floor dead. Police escort Max out of the building with a bag over his head. Through the mesh, Max notices that Alex is being taken to the hospital. He tries to go with her, but the police force him into a police car. When Max is released from detention, he immediately visits Alex in the hospital. After checking through her meds, it turns out that Alex has been lying about taking medication this whole time. Her life expectancy was supposed to be at 16, now she is 17, she's waiting for her time to be up. She didn't tell him because she wanted to experience having her first boyfriend. Then she brings up the topic of death. Max knows what she's about to ask and becomes upset. He's been traumatized by having to watch people die right in front of his eyes and will not do it to the girl he loves. The next day Max ignores Alex's calls and goes to Dan's school. Dan is there looking over the waitress's memorial. When Dan discovers that Max is ignoring Alex, he yells at him and says that refusing to see her means not getting the chance to say goodbye. In the hospital, Alex is hooked up to a ventilator and barely hanging on to life. When she awakens, Max has finally showed up. He lies beside her and tells her he's afraid to say goodbye. The two joke around, which excites Alex, causing her to start breathing heavily. She says she just wants it to be over. Max tells her to close her eyes. He sits up and takes the bandages off slowly. When he lies back down, Alex whispers that she's scared. The teens kiss with their eyes closed, having their last moments together. Slowly Alex opens her eyes as Max begins to cry. They lay there for a moment gazing at each other before realizing she isn't dead. Their happiness falls short though as Alex's heart begins to race and her monitors beep. Sometime later, Alex's hospital bed is empty. Life after Alex's death goes by like a blur for Max. He attends her funeral and returns to the bridge where she first found him. He throws an envelope filled with important things they did together into the water. Months later, Max attends a therapist's appointment. He says he's feeling better day by day. His court case dropped him of charges for the waitress's death, stating it was natural causes. His condition got attention from the news, and people all over the world ask him to help some people and put them out of their suffering. Max also finally discovers why Alex could look at his face. The people who are immune to his killer looks are the ones that love him unconditionally and can see past his beauty.